DACA for many years, and they haven't produced.
The president's framework is not an opening bid. It is a best and final offer.
What was Susan Rice doing on Donald Trump's inauguration day? She writes herself an email that essentially said, we did everything by the book.
She's obviously trying to rewrite history. She's trying to make it look as if something happened that didn't happen. Why would by the book be in quotations?
Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer traded barbs today over a very contentious topic.
You cannot just run against Donald Trump. And it is the job of we Democrats to put together a group of proposals aimed at the middle class.
It is the biggest canine competition there is.
And we sent Janice Dean to get a behind-the-scenes look.
Are you happy to be on Fox and Friends? Are you going to be a winner? Good luck, my friend. Aw, so sweet. I love that.
Good times and a damn good memory. We in good company. Yeah.
Jake Owen's been on our show. He's been on our show, and we liked him a lot.
He's good company.
Right. Yeah, that's what I heard.
Hey,
as opposed to Bad Company, who we've never had on our show.
No, I think we did.
Are they
we
still
had Bad
together?
Company?
Is Bad Company still together?
We were supposed to have them on, and something went haywire.
Really?
Yeah,
What happened, Toby?
Yeah.
So they were on.
No,
They
they
were
found
still
out you worked
rescheduling.
here,
I
and they
know.
canceled.
Hey, you know what today is? Today is Fat Tuesday, or Shrove Tuesday, also known as Pancake Day, because tomorrow is Ash Wednesday, the first day of Lent.
All right.
Are you going to give something up?
Yep, probably.
Me too.
Right. I've already given up everything. So I've
You've given up
including fatty
everything,
foods and
which
fried
means nothing.
foods. Yes, and meat.
You need
All
to
right.
give up lying now.
Right. Okay, good. I'll try that. It's not going to be easy. Meanwhile, I got to tell you, just when you think you know just about everything on the Russia investigation, we can finally get a verdict, we find out that we have a budget for Robert Mueller for another 2 years at $10 million a year. And then we also found out that the Obama administration might have played more of a role in this Russia investigation than any might have thought. And where do you stop if you want to find the truth or at least some confusion? Susan Rice.
All right, so Election Day, President Trump obviously wins. Then January 20th is inauguration. At 12:15, 15 minutes after she lost her job because she was the NSA director for President Obama, Susan Rice sends herself an email on the last day of her job with notes about a meeting that happened with President Obama 15 days earlier.
And this is part of the letter that she wrote to herself. 15 minutes out of a job, still using the White House equipment. She typed out, President Obama began the conversation. This is talking about an Oval Office meeting regarding Russia collusion. Started the conversation by stressing his continued commitment to ensuring that every aspect of this issue is handled by the intel and law enforcement communities by the book. The president stressed that he is not asking about, initiating, or instructing anything from a law enforcement perspective. He reiterated that our law enforcement team needs to proceed as it normally would by the book. That all sounds like exactly how a lawyer would describe, okay, if you're going to have a meeting, you should do it this way. The question is that what happened? And what happened before it? Lindsey Graham had these observations last night with Martha.
What I'm worried about is it's an effort by the president to basically get himself on the record through Susan Rice to make sure that from his point of view, everything was done by the book. The question is, did the president know anything about the FISA warrant application? Did Susan Rice know that the warrant application included a dossier from Mr. Steele when he was on the payroll of the Democratic Party coming from Russian sources, and that the information in the FISA warrant application was a dossier that was political in nature, and that Mr. Steele hated President Trump, candidate Trump, and was trying to do everything he could to beat him? That's not exactly by the book.
And he went on to say, what would you look at what happened? It was an abuse of power, and it's not by the book. So this is really odd. So a couple of things. If you keep telling people it's by the book or I'm being honest, usually it means you're not. I'm not saying that's not. I also thought it's very curious that James Comey says all the time, you know, there was something about President Trump. When I met with him, I had to write a quick recap of everything we discussed. But when it came to President Obama, I never really felt that way, or with President Bush. But when asked how many times you meet with President Obama, he said twice. He never mentioned in this meeting with Joe Biden, James Comey, Susan Rice, and the president, and of course Sally Yates talking about what happened. Now, some would say on the other side, well, look, something that President Obama saw was so alarming on January 5th that he wanted to proceed with an investigation, which ended, as far as he's concerned, January 20th.
Right. The argument against that particular scenario is if it was so alarming on January 5th, you would have written the memo on January 5th. You wouldn't have waited until high noon on the inauguration day.
Two things are suspicious about this that we just want answers. These are the facts. She wrote this email to herself 15 days after the meeting. Like, I understand if you're James Comey, we need to look at his notes because, you know, he comes out of every meeting allegedly with all these memos. We need to see what he said about the meeting. But she writes this email to herself. Three things are suspicious. Why is she writing this to herself? She's doing it 15 days after the meeting. Why? And she's doing it 15 minutes out after she lost her job.
Sure. One of the things that a lot of politicians and a lot of people down in Washington do is they do memorialize their notes by sending themselves an email. So that's not unusual. It's just your earlier points are so on target, though. Why did she wait 3 weeks?
So 2 out of the 3 you agree with?
I do. I read a great thing this morning on one of the websites where they say a lot of people in Washington send themselves emails.
Well, I've done that before, but not
exactly.
15 days later about notes from a meeting I had.
But the other thing is Barack Obama was being briefed about the Russia collusion. He knew about the dossier, right? Did he know that the dossier was used with a bunch of cooked up material to get the FISA? And also, why hasn't the former president of the United States been queried about any of this stuff?
Well, sooner or later, between that and the text messages, you wonder how much he was involved. 6 minutes now after the hour. The other big story yesterday, and there was quite a few between infrastructure on down, was the president saying it's beginning. It's beginning. Just like I said, I do not want the DACA negotiations part of the budget process. I do want to get something done, and I'm leaving it an open vessel. I gave you my big 4 pillars of things I want included in any type of DACA negotiation, but I'm not telling you exactly what to put in. And here's what he tweeted. Negotiations on DACA have begun. Republicans want to make a deal, and Democrats say they want to make a deal. Wouldn't it be great if we could finally, after so many years, solve the DACA puzzle? This will be our last chance. There will never be another opportunity. March 5th is the day the president put out there.
Just tweeted that, right? Like an hour ago?
Yeah, he did. So we told you yesterday morning about the big Republican proposal by senators where it has the 4 pillars of the president's plan. On the other side, it sounds like the Democrats want to simply introduce the DREAM Act, which would provide citizenship, a pathway to citizenship for all the dreamers in the country. But there's no enforcement for the most part. So you look at the right, you've got the president's plan, and you look at the left, and they've got just the dreamers. Obviously, they're going to wind up having votes on both. They don't have enough on the Republican side. They don't have any Democrats who are signed up. No Republican, for the most part, is going to vote for the Democrat plan. So ultimately, what they're going to do, they're going to go to their bases and say, well, we tried that. It didn't work, so we came up with this compromise. If they're able to do anything at all.
I think Democrats, I think they're going to have to vote for this because it's going to backfire on them. If they don't, the dreamers are going to get mad and say, look, this was your chance to keep us in the country. That's all they care about.
And you didn't do anything in 2011. You didn't do anything for 8 years when President Obama was in office. Now you say you had somebody that wants to do a deal and you didn't do a deal. They're going to start screaming in Brooklyn again outside Chuck Schumer's office. On top of that, I think that they're going to say border security for DACA. Okay? And then Tom Cotton, who's going to be on shortly, says, no, we're going to put in chain migration and we're going to put it into the lottery system. And that's where the negotiation will start. And also where the money's going to come from, the $28 billion or $25 billion the president wants.
Yeah, but the Senate is one thing. But then you've also got the House, which will have veto power over the Senate. And if the senators come up with something that's mushy in the middle, that's not really what either side want, by the time it gets to the Republican-led House, they're going to veto it. And if the president doesn't like it, he's going to say, sorry, can't sign it.
Meanwhile, Chuck Schumer, speaking yesterday, had a message, and it's been pretty clear. You notice he never brings up the Russia investigation because he thinks it's a dead end when it comes to voters. And when he talks about winning at the midterms and in 2020, he knows just being anti-Trump doesn't work. Listen.
Our mistake, I think, you cannot just run against Donald Trump. And it is the job of we Democrats to put together a strong, cohesive economic group of proposals aimed at the middle class and those struggling to get there.
It sounds like a Republican message to me.
Well, you know what? He was actually appearing at an event at the University of Louisville. He was the guest of Mitch McConnell. So Mitch McConnell is standing right over there, and Mitch McConnell's probably going, yeah.
Okay, so know your audience kind of thing?
Right.
Exactly.
But I'll add this. He did say check off a few items in his so-called better deal approach from a few months ago. He got in the last budget $5.8 billion for child care development, block grant program, $20 billion in infrastructure spending, he says, for rural broadband funds. But that's also a Republican item, too. And he ticked off a few things that he got in that budget, which he signed off on with Mitch McConnell. They got the Freedom Caucus so angry.
Well, the Democrats got pretty much everything they wanted, and the Republicans got a great big deficit that they've got to explain going forward.
Well, the one thing they do have is there's a lot of the Trump agenda items in there, including opioids, $6.8 billion for that. So there's some of the spending really goes to the Trump agenda.
We interviewed a mom yesterday who lost her son to the opioid abuse. You might have seen that interview. He's so cute and football star. He was 20 years old. And we learned I think it's 172 people die every single day, or did last year, in this country because of opioids.
Do you know it's cost us $1 trillion between all the abuse
so not
and
only
all
can
the
we
rehab?
save lives, we could save money, too, if we crack down on it.
You ever talk about somebody that loves to save money? Jillian.
Good morning to you guys. How's
Are you
it going?
a coupon girl?
No.
You're not?
No. I like a deal, though. I do like a deal.
I do, too.
Yeah. Good morning, guys. Let's get right to this Fox News alert. Out of Detroit, Michigan, 3 women killed, 3 police officers hurt during a 14-hour standoff. The suspect barricaded himself inside his home after a fight with his girlfriend. He shot and killed her and 2 of her family members, then turned the gun on himself. Before that, he was firing at police for nearly an hour, hitting 3 in the legs.
Pray for Detroit Police Department, all first responders, because we live in some trying times right now.
All of those officers will make a full recovery. The illegal immigrant and 7-time felon acquitted in the shooting death of Kate Steinle is expected to plead not guilty to federal gun charges today. Jose Zarate facing 1 count of felony possession of a firearm and 1 count of an illegal immigrant in possession of a firearm. Felony possession was the only conviction for Zarate in the November trial. The jury ruling Steinle's 2015 death at a San Francisco pier an accident. He faces up to 10 years in prison. And the kids dominating the Olympics. 17-year-old U.S. snowboarding phenom Chloe Kim bringing home the gold in the halfpipe at the Winter Games. Kim had the gold medal locked down before her final run, scoring a near-perfect 98 anyway, nailing back-to-back 1080s. So impressive. She celebrated with fellow American Ariel Gold, who earned the bronze. The United States continues to hold down 3rd place in the medal count with 3 golds. Germany leads the way with 4. But there's still plenty of time, guys.
A young woman named Gold got the bronze and not the gold.
Right.
Oh.
It's all right.
Oh, her last
You can't
name's
have
Gold.
2 golds, you know?
I know. Who knew? All right.
Thanks, Jillian. All right, remember the father who charged at the convicted child predator, Larry Nassar? Is that how you say his name, Larry?
Nassar.
That professor, that doctor. All right, watch this.
Well, I'm going to have to get something.
Do you blame him? You know, we've got an update on that drama that happened in court coming up next.
Will he be charged?
Plus, budget bias alert. The media hits President Trump for his plan, even though they praise President Obama for wanting to spend nearly the same amount. David Brody is here to call out the bias from his colleagues.
Right.
He is live next on Fox and Friends. Good morning, David.
Smokes for cake, still hadn't lost that baby weight, and that baby's about to graduate from college. I just
President Trump's critics in the media wasting no time slamming his budget proposal. The Associated Press tweeted, President Trump sends Congress $4.4 trillion spending plan that features soaring deficits. Notice that part, that features soaring deficits. That's a far cry from their coverage of the Obama budget back in 2015 and 2016, touting his plans to combat terror and help the middle class. David Brody is the chief political correspondent for the Christian Broadcasting Network. He joins us right now to react. David, Mark, could we put those AP things back up on the screen again? There you've got them touting President Obama. Yeah. He spent nearly the same amount, but it combated terror threats and global warming and pledged assistance for the middle class, even though both those budgets did also feature soaring deficits like President Trump. What's going on?
Well, a couple things. First of all, the anti-Trump filter in clear force, for sure, for the Associated Press. Look, last year they did the same thing. Last year they talked about how the Republican budget was going to gut, that was the word, gut, science and the environment. And then they went to, that was their factual analysis. And then there came the opinion afterwards. I like to call it the shot in the chaser. And the opinion there was because that is what Republicans are against as it relates to mainstream climate and all of that. I mean, they were giving opinion, not just fact, and it's ridiculous.
You know, I remember when I was in journalism school, everybody regarded the Associated Press as a fair broker. Are you telling me they are now political?
Yeah, it's starting to become that way. And I think one thing that Donald Trump has done, if nothing else, and he's done a lot, he has exposed this media bias like we've never seen before. We knew it existed before, but he has literally, I mean, we're talking about CNN, the quote, most trusted name in news. Look, they have gone off the rails to the point where some of their, what they're supposed to be regular main anchor hosts are now giving opinion commentary at the end of their programs. It's just fascinating to watch.
It is. Meanwhile, you got a brand new book. It comes out today. It's called The Faith of Donald J. Trump. Talks about him being a religious fellow, which explain his journey.
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, it is a spiritual journey, for sure. And it's been going on, especially in those last 5 to 7 years or so. He's surrounding himself with a lot of folks that are very close to him and have been, in essence, what we like to call evangelical Christianity, witnessing to him. A lot of stories in the book. We actually speak with Donald Trump for the book. It's a new interview in the book, in the Oval Office. Sorry, Michael Wolff, but we actually did an interview with the president in the Oval Office. 2 with the vice president as well, Kellyanne Conway, Paula White. Paula White says, look, I've had deep spiritual conversations with this president, with Donald Trump, who she's known for a while, and says 100% he is a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. Mike Pence says it twice, and the president himself says, I'm a believer. It's all in the book. It's pretty interesting.
Fantastic. Check it out. It comes out today, The Faith of Donald J. Trump. All right, Mr. Brody, thank you very much for joining us live.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Meanwhile, President Trump is set to meet with a group of sheriffs at the White House later today. During the last meeting last year, he promised our next guest that he would get rid of illegal immigrants. Is he delivering? That sheriff joins us live next. And a new battle is brewing between Senators Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer. It has nothing to do with politics.
Since I don't know when I've been drinking bourbon with.
Time now at 7:24 in New York City for News by the Numbers. First, 500. That is how many illegal immigrants Mexican authorities detained trying to enter the United States over the weekend. 500. Many of them stuffed in unventilated trucks with no food or water. No word yet if they will face any charges. Next, 35,000. That's how many vehicles, more vehicles, are being added to the do not drive list over recalled airbags made by that company, Takata. 2006 Mazda B and Ford Ranger pickups have the potentially explosive and deadly airbags. Dealers will pick the trucks up and replace the bags. I have a car that's impacted as well. And finally, $25 million. That's how much money Ford is pumping into their new plant in the state of Kentucky. The automaker will boost production of SUVs and trucks by about 25%. The plant employs about 8,400 people. And that is some of your News by the Numbers. Ainsley, Brian?
Thank you, Steve. Well, last year, President Trump met with sheriffs from across the country, covering crucial topics like border security and the opioid epidemic.
All right, later today, President Trump will meet with the sheriffs again. He wants a follow-up, create a new agenda for the new year. And joining us right now is someone who will be at that meeting, the sheriff of Polk County, Florida, Florida, Grady Judd. Sheriff, thanks so much for meeting with us today before you meet with the president. What can you tell him in terms of progress?
Well, as president of the Major County Sheriffs of America, I can tell you that President Trump did exactly what he said he would do. And that's so impressive to us. You know, we're on the ground level trying to keep the people of this country safe. He looked us in the eye and said, I commit to you that we will get the illegal alien who is committing crime out of this country. And do you know, we met with him and Secretary Kelly within days of them taking office, and they're doing what they said they would do, and that's a breath of fresh air for all of us.
I know that Attorney General Jeff Sessions spoke at the National Sheriff's Association meeting yesterday, because you all are there in D.C. for this meeting. What message, if the president's watching, what message do you want to relay to him?
Well, I would like to tell President Trump that we think AG Sessions is doing an awesome job. He is working toward enforcing the rule of law. What a novel concept. Congress passed these laws. We need to make sure that they're fairly and equitably enforced. AG Sessions has been a total supporter of the sheriffs of this country and all law enforcement, and we applaud him.
But you know what? There's been pushback, Sheriff, from different sanctuary city states. You know, you have the mayor, Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of San Francisco, others who basically don't want you to do your job in many respects and pushing back on ICE's help.
Here's what I would say to anyone that thinks it's all right for illegal aliens who are committing crime to be in this country. What are you thinking? That's not normal America. We don't want anybody committing crimes. And it's like, are you kidding me? You think it's all right for someone to commit crime, to come across this border illegally, then to commit murders and rapes and robberies and burglaries and thefts every day by the hundreds and thousands? That's not how real America thinks.
I know that you say crime is at a historic low, a 46-year low. Why do you think that is?
I can tell you in my county in the state of Florida, crime's at a 46-year low because we hold people accountable. What a novel idea about asking criminals to either, one, behave, or two, be held accountable for your conduct. And that's what we do in the state of Florida, and we have seen that low crime rate all across the country.
Right.
My fear now is that because we have a 46-year low crime rate, because our index crime is so much lower than it used to be for most of this country, not some of these cities where they seem to let people commit a lot of crime, is I'm hearing talk about letting more people out of prison, let's legalize more drugs, let's do away with the bail bond system. You know, folks, take it from someone who spent their entire adult life in the criminal justice system and protecting and keeping people safe. Crime will go up if you do that.
Senator Grassley is working with Senator Durbin and is kind of pushing the president to do some type of criminal justice reform. A couple of items are on there. Some rehab in prison, shorter sentences for nonviolent criminals. Are you for looking at the criminal justice system?
I think there's always an opportunity to improve. Certainly, I'm for re-entry programs where you prepare people that have been in prison to go back into the workforce. Absolutely. I'm not for shorter prison sentences, and that minor offenses or less serious offenses, that's all in the mind of the beholder. I can tell you a minor offender is a major offender on the next event. So don't buy into that rhetoric that we ought to let these low-level minor offenders out. They earn prison, and they should get it.
Right. 2 officers killed over the weekend. You got 9 killed already in 2018. But at this point in 2017, only 5. So sadly, the cops are still under fire on a regular basis.
That's right. 8 of my deputies were shot at in the last month in 2 separate events. Fortunately, none of them were hit. But there are people that are proactively looking for and looking for the opportunity to hurt law enforcement officers. And President Trump's our best ally right now.
Appreciate what you're doing. Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you so much, Sheriff.
Thank you.
All right, coming up straight ahead, the entire world still in awe after SpaceX launched one of the most powerful rockets ever. Newt Gingrich says this is a big step to putting America back on top in the space race, only privately. He joins us next.
Plus, Fox and Friends goes to the dogs at the Westminster Dog Show.
You just take the brush and brush like that.
Okay. Like teasing like they do with my hair.
Yeah, exactly.
No hairspray, though, right?
No.
Janice takes us behind the scenes, and that's coming up.
Well, once a week, Newt Gingrich drops by. You know him, a Fox News contributor, former Speaker of the House. He wrote that great book. It's called Vengeance, and he joins us live today. Mr. Speaker, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to be with you all.
Hey, we've all
been
scratching our heads. We cannot figure out what Susan Rice was doing 15 minutes into the Trump administration on Inauguration Day when she wrote a memo to herself and emailed it, essentially saying that President Obama and other top law enforcement and FBI and DOJ people did everything by the book when it came to the Russia collusion meeting they had in the Oval Office 3 weeks earlier. What do you make of this?
Well, it may have been there for her to think that that would help protect her. It may have been there because someday she's going to write a memoir, and she just wanted to have it. First of all, I don't know that we ever heard from Comey, the former director of the FBI, that he had been briefing President Obama, that he'd been in these kind of meetings. So I thought from the time we first saw the Peter Strzok text message to his girlfriend about having to get ready because President Obama wants to know everything, I think from that point on, we have a real obligation for Congress to bring former Director Comey back and put him under oath and say, now, did you in fact brief the president? What did he ask you about? Was you talk about obstruction of justice and presidents interfering in the system? This all just gets stranger. And I've told people, when I lived through Watergate, because I was a candidate for the first time as the Nixon administration disintegrated, things start to unravel, and then one thing pulls another thing, and then one morning you're in a space you never dreamed of because they just keep unraveling. And I think Susan Rice's memo is one more example of this thing gradually unraveling.
Well, this is, you have to remember, she said all of that about Benghazi and blamed it on the video, went on all those Sunday shows and lied to the American people about it. And then for this, the timing of this is so bizarre. Why do you think she wrote this memo 15 days after the meeting, notes from the meeting, and she kept saying in her notes to herself that the president insisted we do everything by the book? She used that phrase at least twice.
Well, I mean, I'm guessing that she had taken those notes and hadn't gotten around to it. And this is a guess, as a historian, that she had finally gotten around to it, had a few extra minutes, and thought she would capture it in a structured document.
As she's cleaning out her office?
But that they were probably contemporaneous. Right. I think, exactly, no, literally, I think probably she came, I mean, I've had that happen to me. I'll have some piece of paper from a meeting, 3 weeks ago that I never quite got around to capturing in an email or putting into a file. And I'll sit down and write out. So it may well have been she was just tidying up. But it does look strange.
It's interesting you give it the benefit of the doubt. That's very nice of you. She has 9 more days to respond. I thought it's also very interesting. When you have Senator Grassley and Senator Graham as concerned as anyone, they're not exactly zealot for Donald Trump. And don't you think if President Trump knew about this and knew how involved Comey was, he would have been fired on day 1, correct?
Sure. Well, yeah, of course. Look, if everybody understood that Comey began writing the Clinton exoneration 2 months before he interviewed her, he'd have been fired on day 1. If everybody understood that Comey was apparently changing the language to fit what the Attorney General told him so it was parallel to the Clinton campaign, he'd have been fired on day 1. You just go through what we've learned in the last 6 or 8 months about Director Comey, you realize this guy was totally in the tank, doing everything he could to protect Clinton and get Trump, and that he really, I think, has a huge potential legal problem.
Mr. Speaker, we want to also talk to you about a Fox News opinion piece you wrote about how SpaceX's Falcon rocket is a tremendous step toward reasserting American leadership in space. There you see it blasting off last week. It was something. We saw it live here on the channel as it separated and then came back down to land 2 of the rockets. And then you've got, Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States with his budget yesterday talking about how maybe the International Space Station kind of goes semi-private or something else to have private industry involved in that. Explain why you wanted to write this particular op-ed.
Look, I think that the 2 great entrepreneurs who are rapidly changing space are Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Between Musk's operations, which have now had a remarkable string of successful launches and have really recaptured the commercial satellite market for the United States, and the progress being made by Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' company, we're going to have 2 very large rockets available in the very near future. You just saw the first of them. The John Glenn for Bezos will be the second one. They're going to come in because I've been communicating with both companies. They're going to come in at, say, $100 million a launch because they're reusable. By contrast, the NASA long-term investment in what they call the Space Launch System comes in at over $1 billion a launch. So now you have the private sector able to compete at 10 to 1 in terms of, now, they're not quite as capable. So let's say you had to use 2 launches to match up the NASA rocket. The government rocket still is 5 times more expensive per unit in space than the private sector. The administration actually needs to be more aggressive than it has been in this budget. It should rethink every aspect of the NASA budget and should recognize that you have entrepreneurs creating a new world using new technology. You have bureaucrats who are stuck in an old world. And you have, of course, all the old-time lobbyists and contractors in Washington desperately trying to prop up the implausible. So I think it's a very big moment in space. I thought it was wonderful showmanship by Musk to put a Tesla with Starman in it and launch it out there so that and the reason is I have 2 grandchildren who are 16 and 18. I want them looking at that kind of thing and saying, hey, I could be involved in space. I could have a career doing really cool things. And Musk did a great thing for America this week.
Astronauts were much bigger in the 70s, 60s, and 70s than they were now, and hopefully this next generation will get that sense. Newt, good point. Thanks so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Great.
All right, let's hand it over.
With you.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Let's hand it over to Jill. You know some headlines for you.
Good Tuesday morning to you guys, too, at home as well. Let's start here. Donald Trump Jr. speaking out after his wife had to be rushed to the hospital after opening a letter stuffed with white powder. The envelope was addressed to the president's son. As news broke, Twitter filled with hateful comments like this that says, tragic that Jr. didn't open it. Don Jr. responding, tweeting in part, quote, truly disgusting that certain individuals choose to express their opposing views with such disturbing behavior. The substance, by the way, turned out to be cornstarch. Vanessa Trump was not harmed. The angry father who lunged at convicted sex offender and former Olympic doctor Larry Nassar in court will not face any criminal charges.
Well, I'm going to have to get it.
Prosecutors and a Michigan judge deciding not to punish Randall Margraves after he apologized. The father of 3 girls who said they were sexually assaulted by Nassar says he, quote, lost control. More than 260 women and girls have made sexual assault claims against Nassar, a former team doctor for USA Gymnastics. A new battle is brewing between Senators Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer over bourbon.
Brooklyn, where I was born, raised, and still proudly live, produces some of the best bourbon in the world. I know that's a contentious thing to say in these parts.
The New York Democrat gifting the Senate Majority Leader with bourbon during his event, an event in his home state of Kentucky, which is the world's bourbon capital. But I feel like we need to do a taste test, guys, in order to be able to report accurately.
Why not? Right. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. All right, thank you very much.
I did not know Brooklyn made their own bourbon. I know they have their own basketball team.
There you go.
18 minutes before the top of the hour.
The U.S. Senate opens up for a debate on immigration yesterday as the president says Democrats need to come to the table. Senator Tom Cotton, a Republican, is going to join us to talk about whether or not a bipartisan deal can be made.
And more good economic news. A new study says Americans are feeling better than ever about their payday. Charles Payne breaks down the numbers. Coming up next.